No, that's okay. So I think we're recording now. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your help, Sally. Well, welcome. It's good to be here. As I was sharing with Sally, it's been many, many years that I have not been able to attend a Taos event. So it is very exciting to become reacquainted with the community and the ideas that the Taos represent that have been foundational to my training as a family therapist in this country, but even when I trained as a psychologist more than 20 years ago in Colombia, we studied Kenneth Gergen's social constructions and perspectives. So it was very exciting to actually be involved in a community that these ideas have created. So, so Jon and I will be chatting with you for a little bit. So as I mentioned, that the presenter that was going to facilitate her work in the other half an hour canceled. So then Dawn mentioned that if the conversation extends over the 30 minutes, that was okay, but I don't think that we have to cover the full hour if that is not the case. So before we start, we wanted to share with you that we are speaking today from the land of the Kumeyaay. This is in South California, in the San Diego area. So in acknowledgement for the territory in which the organizations, particularly of the university where we both are connected in one way or another, we want to acknowledge their traditions, and we thought that we start with reading their statement that they wrote for the university. So this was written by Mike Connolly Misquish, who is part of the Kumeyaay community. We stand upon a land that carries the footsteps of millennia for Kumeyaay people. They are a people whose traditional lifeways intertwine with a worldview of earth and sky in a community of living beings. This land is part of a relationship that has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced the Kumeyaay people to the present day. It is part of the worldview founded in the harmony of the cycles of the sky and balancing the forces of life. For the Kumeyaay, red and black represent the balance of those forces that provide for harmony within our bodies, as well as the world around us. As students, faculty, staff, and alumni of the San Diego State University, we acknowledge this legacy from the Kumeyaay. We promote this balance in life as we pursue our goals of knowledge and understanding. We find inspiration in the Kumeyaay spirit to open our minds and hearts. It is a legacy of the red and black. It is the land of the Kumeyaay. Eyay ehan, my heart is good. So our work on decolonial aesthetics seeks to also inspire the principles of balance of the Kumeyaay folks. But so now we will, perhaps Jon and I will introduce ourselves, and it would be fantastic if you also share with us a little bit about your backgrounds and anything that you would like to share as well for the conversation. So Jon, would you like to introduce yourself now?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. This is very exciting and just honored to be a part of such an awesome institution and gathering. My name is Jon. I'm a associate marriage and family therapist. I was in the San Diego State's marriage and family therapy program with Marcela. She was my professor and clinical supervisor throughout my time there. I graduated in May, and I'm currently just working at a clinic providing mental health services to a wide range of the population. I also consider myself a songwriter, something that I'm really starting to get more into as I grow older and starting to realize that my gifts as a songwriter. So not only am I a therapist, but I do consider myself to be a an artist in many senses of my life. And, you know, I'm really excited for this. I'm really excited to share how we merged the two worlds of academics with artistry and music and poetry in a sense. So I'm really excited to share what kind of came together as a result of this, you know, not just the program, but Marcela's lens of teaching and I guess the opposition to mainstream educational learning, that there's other alternatives to learn. So yeah, just really excited to share what kind of came together into fruition. I should probably add, sorry, just to give some more context to the song that you're going to hear. It'll make more sense if you understand that I'm a biracial, white and Latino male. I grew up in a small little town with a large Latino population, but with a history of like white oppression prior to it. So that's just a little more context. It'll give you a little bit more insight into kind of what came together and why this piece was written.
Gracias, Jon. So my name is Marcela Polanco. I am Colombiana immigrant. I've been in this country for more than 20 years. And so I think I'm a borderland because I carry with me the experiences of two territories that subscribe to different understandings of race and gender and sexuality. So as a Colombian, I would describe myself as a Eurocentric mestiza, embodying the colonization of my indigenous and African ancestry, but also representing the colonized as a mixture of different ancestries. And here in the US, I am racialized, monetized, sexualized as a Latinx woman of color. And so my ancestry is intimately connected to my role at the university and as an instructor of marriage and family therapy and being part of the academia, which is an institution that has replicated oppression, knowledge, aesthetics, race, gender. So I see my role as an educator as owing to the different expressions of genocide, linguistically, in terms of knowledge and existence. So the work that we're going to be sharing today is a little bit of how to work within the tensions of hoping to honor the knowledges that the institution and the profession where I work and serve have been appropriating and excluding, right? So we will share a little bit more about that. But would you be up for introducing yourselves as well?
Marcela, I'll start if that's okay. I'm Sally St. George, and my feet are grounded on Treaty 7 territory in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And I'm really looking forward to listening and conversing with you because Canada is in the midst of many tensions and many troubles that have come to light. They've been around for a long time, but they are now public and come to light. And so this is very foremost, not only in our curriculum development, but just in our daily lives. And academically, my specialties are I work in the integration of social work and family therapy, and I'm on my final sabbatical, and next June, I retire from the university. So I feel free to do other things, additional things, even probably more off the wall things.
Yeah, I can probably take over from there. I'll be short. I live in France, but I'm originally from India. And well, I've been working on educational transition now for several years. And so I'm very, very keen on listening to what you have to say, because one of the let's say the topics that is of importance, and on which in fact recently I've even written an article, is this whole concept of cultural diversity through education. And I have been campaigning for not integrating all these cultural perspectives and understandings into mainstream education, but letting them letting their own spaces, helping their own spaces to nurture this cultural diversity that we are so much in need of, on the planet. And therefore, I am keen to hear how you work, and to see what, how that can inspire my thoughts on this. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lucy Cotter. I'm the co-founder of the Narrative Counseling Center in Los Angeles, and an artist primarily in my heart, and faculty at Antioch University, Los Angeles, and very interested and grateful for Marcela's work, and thrilled to meet Jon. Hi.
Oh, finally, my mouse was not working. Okay. Yeah, I'm Elizabeth, and I've lived in several different continents, basically, as well. And I'm a mother of a biracial daughter, and expecting a biracial grandchild as well in a couple of months. Yes, I'm really I'm really intrigued in the issue of decolonization, and what you just said, Sheila, about giving them a space separately, or integrating it, or whatever. Does it become mainstream and thing? I visited the Just Therapy Center in New Zealand, and then came several times to London. I'm in London, and I was quite intrigued, about, Kiwi singing, and praying before she even gave any talk. They're starting any talk with their languages and their prayers and so on. And when I visited, they did a presentation on research they had done in the Pacific Islands about volunteering in the 50s and so on. And the government had funded this, and there were government representatives, and they greeted us, we were sort of invited to be party to that, and they greeted everybody who was part of that kind of feedback session in the different government representatives in the different languages, the Pacific language, the Maori language, the older languages of New Zealand as well. And there was at least half an hour of this from the side of the government representatives, who were all white. And that was a very interesting experience for me. So I really look forward to this presentation. Sorry, it took me a little bit of while to speak. And
Great, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing a little bit of context from where you are. And so given that we have a little bit more of time, it also allows us to have a little bit of conversation. So if just feel free to ask us any questions as we engage in sharing the ideas that we prepare for you. So how we thought that we were going to share this work with you is I'm gonna talk hopefully briefly, which is against my Colombian oral traditions to be brief. So I'll do my best. What is the term decolonial aesthetics, and how has that been connected to the training of marriage and family therapists, which I consider as a Eurocentric profession, in a westernized university as is San Diego State University. Then I will briefly share one of the assignments that I have been trying to develop, change, and still have a lot of work to do. And it's the reason why I'm interested in the conversation with you to continue building. Then as a result of that assignment, then Jon is going to share his work. And then we will be in conversation about Jon's work and thoughts that these may evoke from all of you. So what I mean by decolonial aesthetics. So this term comes from a group in Abya Yala, which is the Kuna name for what we now call, or Europe invented as, Latin America. So I will refer to the European name Latin America as Abya Yala. So a group of activists, indigenous, African, campesinos, intellectuals have articulated a project that is called Modernity, Coloniality, Decoloniality. It is an option on how to understand the invention of Latin America, the invention of indigenous, Black, African, mestizos ways of being, from a position of not only resistance, but re-existing outside from the European invention. So I'm not going to talk a little bit about that, all of that body of work, but I'm going to center into decolonial aesthetics. And so what they propose is that there have been quite a bit of work in decolonizing knowledge, decolonizing gender, but there has been little work done in terms of decolonizing aesthetics. And they critique the term aesthetics, understanding that aesthetics is a modern Eurocentric term that was appropriated to determine what counts as what is beautiful, the beautiful and the sublime, right? That is the definition of aesthetics. And that is the appropriation, the European appropriation of the senses, of the experience. And so from that view of aesthetics, only those with artistic capabilities could construct art. And therefore, what is outside that modern definition of art, which are the indigenous ways of being, of sensing, of moving, are considered folklore or are considered inferior because are not fit within that modern of art. So they take the term aesthesis instead of aesthetics, that it relates to the senses and the sensibilities. And their interest in holding on to the senses and the sensibilities is to liberate them from Europe and its modernities project, from how they have appropriated experience, how to understand the world, how to perceive the world, and how bodies are to perceive and feel and sense and move. And in my way of understanding, mental health has been one of the most powerful institutions that have appropriated how to feel, how to sense, and how the body exists and is to exist in relationships, right? So we talk about depression, we talk all of the mental health rhetoric is the appropriation of the senses. So by liberating the senses, now when I think as an educator, I can see more clearly how ironic it is that our training of therapists is text-centered. They have to read articles, they have to write research papers, and they have to articulate in words. And this is also a legacy of our colonization, the imposition of the alphabet, right? So the imposition of the alphabet, the imposition of the text has erased and excluded any other expressions of experience that are, once again, the taste, movement, sound, the vision, other ways of perception that are not the European perception. So it is, so that then has taken me to shift just how to create a syllabus, right? What are the sources that folks will then engage in their process of learning? How do we learn in community that is not only centered on research, textual research, right? Which is research also as a means of legitimizing knowledge. So that on one hand. On the other hand, so the specific course that I'm talking about, Sheila, that you spoke a little bit, is a course on cross-culturalism, right? How to train family therapists to engage in conversations across culture. And so the mainstream, as you and John mentioned, the mainstream training of culture is also the colonial legacy of the construction of identities as boxes, right? So the Latinx, the Africans, the Europeans there. And often those courses, when I started teaching, I was using those textbooks, and I was, as a Latinx woman, I was teaching how Latinx women are or communities are in the US, only to understand that the text did not represent me. And I was teaching majority of Latinx students in the universities where I worked before. So it was a contradiction that I was teaching a knowledge that had nothing to do with the relationship that we were building in training. So instead of teaching cultural diversity as how people need to be proficient on these box-like identities, I have, so we have shifted the gaze, right? And how do we understand relationships of power? How do we understand cultural identities? How do we understand race and gender from our incarnated experience? And this is quite critical when the majority of our students in our cohort here in San Diego State come from different backgrounds, very, very, very different backgrounds. And our experiences, our bodies are the representation of the systems of power that we're training people in. So instead of going out to the research that has been constructed by researchers that may not have nothing to do with our experiences. So it's inviting folks to be their own researchers, through their incarnated corporeal experiences, understand how systems of power operate as they incarnate them. So bringing decolonial understanding of culture and race that keeps from the academic racism or further racializing communities by becoming very proficient about how groups work. So we're trying to stay away from that. And we're trying to stay away from the text aesthetic training. So when combining these two things, so the specific assignment that I wanted to share is, so drawing a bit from autoethnography. I started drawing a little bit from autoethnography, but I'm now drawing a little bit from testimonio, which is the traditions that is embedded more in Abya Yala. That is their research project in the class, which is how do they, from their incarnated experience, which the folks from from Abya Yala call the corporal politics, the body politics, how they explore experiences of power from within as they live them, as they experience them in community. And I emphasize strongly then to stay away from text. I emphasize, when I say strongly, it's an invitation, but I'm really persistent. And really invite them to stay away from text. And that they draw from their traditions or from their own experiences of sense and sensibility, what moves them, if it's food, if it's color, if it's music, if it's photography, if it's, so from that traditional aesthesis expression of the world, adopt that as the method instead of the text or research. And then through that method, explore how power operates in your life from different perspectives, how oppression is experienced and how oppression is responded to. All right, so that was a little bit of, so then Jon is gonna share with us in the way that he responded to the assignment. And then Jon is gonna share a little bit more about how that experience was like for him.
How do I share? Am I playing it now?
Yeah, that would be great. Oh, can you share?
How do I share the computer audio?
I think you, when you do share,
So,
if you go to the top, it says basic, advanced, or files.
oh yeah. Computer audio.
If you click, yeah, there you
Oh, okay. So I'm not going to share my screen, right? Just share the audio.
go. I think it only shares the audio.
Okay. Oh, fantastic. Okay, here we go. So yeah, I ended up writing a song to kind of explain my childhood upbringing, growing up in a family with a Caucasian father, and my mother is Guatemalan, and just basically explains kind of like a story of what my experience was, and with the collision of two different cultures merging. So yeah, I call the song "In the Middle," being stuck in the middle, essentially, in between the polarities of the contrasting cultures, essentially. So here we go. Wait, can y'all hear that? Okay, I want to restart. Just want to make sure.
Much oppression, and moving here created a disconnection from her roots. The once beautifully colored Guatemalan patterns in her clothes now hung by a thread, but she hung on to it a little, and I'd hear it in the words that she spoke, the books that she read me, and taste it in the food that she made. And as I grew up, it started fading more, and all that was left were these little parts. But these ripples would later become waves of momentum for me. The waves meet the sand as two cultures merge, and as always, there's an impact. My father's side, my white side, dominated my childhood and adolescence. I remember hearing people say not to speak Spanish in the classroom. You speak English at school, or go back to Mexico. So how are we supposed to keep the roots alive when the plants are being poisoned? This biracial split evoked confusion as a little kid. Little by little, pushing and pulling, leaving me feeling stuck in the middle. Do you know what it's like living life in the middle? Can't find your way home, no, in the middle. You ever feel lost in life just a little? I live my whole life right in the middle. And as I grew older, I'd hear hateful arguments against immigration, and I never understood the anger, 'cause uprooting your life takes courage. To risk your lives to come to a foreign land in search of a life that everybody deserves. So the idea of a border became so strange to me, and on one hand, I get it. At this point, we can't just open up the gates. But to me, a border represents more than that. Because if we look at the earth from space, we don't see the lines that separate us. Borders are symbolic of the division that exists within ourselves. And since my mother came here illegally, I've wondered how these people truly feel about me. The truth has made me uncomfortable, and I felt the undertones of rejection throughout my life. So I walked through life with white skin, but a colored heart. A hint of insecurity and doubt of who I am and where I belong. Because I'm a product of the oppressor and the oppressed. Do you know what it's like living life in the middle? Can't find your way home, no, in the middle. You ever feel lost in life just a little? I live my whole life right in the middle. The middle, ironically, is where I fit in birth order amongst my brothers. It's a place where many of us reside and do not know our way out. Fear has blindfolded our hearts and robbed us of our vision. We must relocate our internal compass so that we can lead our lives in the right direction. And restitch the clothes that once hung by a thread and reattach it to our truths. We must strengthen the branches that sustain our fruits, but every strong foundation must contain its roots. Now if I could take back the feelings of being worthless, I wouldn't, because everything was perfect. As if it was by design to help me find my purpose, to become a man of service to those that feel stuck in the middle. Do you know what it's like living life in the middle? Can't find your way home, no, in the middle. You ever feel lost in life just a little? I live my whole life right in the middle. Do you know what it's like living life in the middle? Can't find your way home, no, in the middle.
Thank you, Jon, for sharing your work. Well, the first question that I have which we did not agree that I was going to ask this question, is how was it like for you to share your song here?
Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like if I would write it now, it would be a lot different. But that's what came out. That's what came out at the time, which was, I don't know, a year and a half or 2 years. So it's interesting, hearing it again. I haven't heard it in a long time. But I mean, I really like the piece. I think there's some powerful lyrics in there that I think they were written really well. I don't know. So I like sharing it. It felt good to kind of revisit it. And
Yeah. Thank you, Jon. Well, I do have some questions, of course, in relation to the assignment, but I wonder if any folks would want to respond or react to the song.
Certainly to say thank you for sharing it. It's beautiful.
Thanks, Lucy.
Yeah, I think it's really lovely. It was really lovely hearing you. Super.
Thank you so much. That's so
and I can relate so much to it, although I've not had any illegality in my past, but I mean, to inverted commas, I mean to say, but I can relate to so many things you said there. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I could also completely relate to it. Yeah, thank you so much. It was very moving.
Wow, thank you. That means a lot. Thank you.
I agree too. And I think the words are powerful, but the music adds that layer of feeling that, words alone just can't do. So I really appreciate the messages, the powerful messages that are exerted in music, for example, in 3 minutes or less. It's like amazing. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, no, I think you bring a good point.
Yeah. So
sorry.
I just wanted to say, music for me, given that focus on aesthetics, just lovely. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Now, the question I have is, had you written it in, is English your first language?
No, it's my second language.
So Spanish is the first, is it? Yeah, so had you written it in Spanish, would, the feeling would have been different, I think.
Yeah, wow, what a good perspective to think about how that would have been expressed. Yeah, I didn't think about that. It would have took on a completely different emotional experience, I think. Thanks for that.
Because there's a lot in language. I think language carries metaphors, and the metaphors is very culturally ingrained, and so anyway, that's another discussion, but we should listen to the rest of all that you'll want to say. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, actually, Sheila, that's very much part of the discussion as well, because part of it is also thinking from their linguistic context, because as you very well point out, then understanding experiences of power, discrimination from the vantage of language and how that is expressed. Yeah, because that also is very closely linked to decolonial aesthetics, and is the imposition of English in the expression of in what constitutes as world, how the world is experienced, and how the world is expressed. That is what decolonial aesthesis is trying to decolonize. And so that means then to the link from the English language for those of our who exist in other languages, because English imposes a way of being and therefore a way of sensing. And in many of the conversations, Jon and I have also been collaborating within the Spanglish certificate that we have in the school. So yeah, language is very critical. So Jon, how was it? So I'm curious about, because when inviting folks to do an assignment that is not research or text, not to write a paper where they don't have to ask how many how many references, citations, how many papers, those questions are no longer applicable because now the assignment is something else. How was it like for you to make the decision of going through music and creating music within the academic context of this class?
It was, I'd say it was freeing in a sense. You know, you spend your whole years at the standardized testing, filling in bubbles, and then you did my undergraduate degree, and it's all just rooted on examinations and performing on tests. And then so to get into a graduate program that, I mean, not every class was like this where we could do a creative project, but to have an occasional classes here and there, it felt really good. And of course I jumped at the opportunity when a creative project was presented. But to be honest, I probably spent more time creating this than I would have a research paper. I mean, I'm not complaining in any sense, but it's just the reality like that this process was tedious. And yeah, especially because, you know, there's a musical component, Sally, like you were talking about, of really adding the musical element to add the more evocative sense of it really was like it's like emergence of the lyricism and then the musical component as well. But overall, ultimately, it was just an incredible experience to be able to do this in a graduate program.
Yeah. And with the intent of the assignment to learn about systems of power, oppression, how, if you can share a little bit about your learning experience through the construction of, through the vantage point of music. What would you say?
Wait, I'm sorry, could you rephrase?
Yeah, so yeah, I'm sorry. Given that the assignment had the intention also to invite folks to think about relationships of power, but relationships of power from your experience. So I think it's asking about the construction of the sound and the lyrics, right? How was it like for you then to explore your experiences, to construct the music with attention to power? Was that better? I can give it another go.
No, that was great. That was fantastic. Thank you. It was pretty challenging, if I'm honest. You know, I had to reflect on early childhood experiences of really hearing and you know, there's a line of, you hear people in the classroom saying not to speak Spanish in the classroom, you speak English at school, you go back to Mexico. And that's a truth. That's a truthful thing that I would hear. And it's like, so then you start to question this kind of stuff as a child. This is your first language. You know, in the US, you speak English. So, you know, it had its painful moments to really explore some of this stuff where it's like, well, and then stuff that I didn't even really process at the moment. You know, it's some of those things you just kind of just like, oh, you know, that's part of your life. And, you know, I didn't really acknowledge it. So part of it was, it involved a lot of self-reflection, kind of really to process what happened, and that this actually did happen, things that did happen, and I think they did impact me in a sense. And then to kind of merge that into music, I think, you know, art in whatever form is the highest form of self-expression. So to be able to do it and construct and express.
Oh, Jon, I think we lost you for a little bit. Can you hear us?
Oh.
Sorry, I got disconnected.
Oh, she's back.
Yes, sorry about that. Oh my goodness. I'm glad that I was able to join back in. Sorry about that.
So last thing I said, I was just ultimately, I think it became like a pretty healing experience for me to kind of to merge music and the exploring of my early childhood events.
Yeah. Thank you for highlighting that, Jon, because I think these experiences, by now witnessing, because now I am the instructor and I receive all of this work, and this work is shared then in community. They don't assign the work only for me to review it, but it's shared with the whole cohort. I have come to understand the idea of relationality in education, I've come to understand my role as an educator is not to give people the tools so that they become therapists, but, and also learn this from my colleagues where I work, is education is an experience of healing so that people can go back to the communities to work. So there's not a strong emphasis of how to teach them the Eurocentric family therapy techniques and theories, but it's how as a community we heal together, because the majority of us, including the instructors, myself, we come from experiences of colonization, oppression. How do we engage in community to address our own experiences so that then we can join outside of the institution, the community, so that we can accompany one another in the process? So your emphasis on healing has been then at the heart on how I have continued to think about what is to learn in a communal, which is a work that is influenced by Maria Lugones. So we have just a few minutes left. I'm going to share from this past cohort some of the folks that also constructed their work. We put together a video if you want to check it out later, and also share the manifesto of the folks from Avia Yala on decolonial aesthetics for your reference. But we're curious. Oh, sorry. Okay. We're curious to hear from you about in the ways in which you bring aesthetics in your work, or some of the things that these experience have evoked for you that you would want to share with a group.
Are you asking me?
You or the group? Yeah. If you want to add anything else, Jon, that would be fantastic as well.
I have another question. Did I understand that it's a degree course? Is that it?
It's a big what? Sorry.
Is it a degree course? I mean, do you get it? Do you get it?
Yeah. Yes. So we prepare folks to become marriage and family therapists. So it's the academic requirement, so that then they apply to the state of California to become licensed therapist. So they have to do some work after the degree, but they need the degree, educational degree in family therapy to do that.
Okay, and this is what we have just, what you have just talked about is one part of the course. Is that it?
Yes, it's a course on cross-cultural communication. It's one of the introductory courses to the master's degree.
All right, okay.
Yeah, and so this assignment is part of that course. Is the first semester is a summer semester. So this is the entrance into their preparation to become family therapists.
All right.
So they enter through their own experiences, so to speak, to the training. Yeah.
So I'm sorry I was late. Can I just reflect as you asked?
Yeah, of course.
I think decoloniality as the broader phenomena of decolonization is such an important thing to be thinking about. And I also was attracted because of the word aesthetics. My own work relates to our relationships to nature more broadly. So, I mean, we're talking about the relationship between people, but our relationships to the natural environments that we are a part of and that we depend on is also a subject to me for some of these same principles that you're talking about. How can we heal, give therapy to our species about these rather destructive habits we've developed in relationship to nature?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, that addresses the first imposition, European imposition through the colonization, was the fracture of the human and non-human. And therapy has continued that fracture by positioning therapy only as a human activity. Consider human also what the work of Sylvia Winter, Black feminist Sylvia Winter, who determines that the idea of the human also represents also white people. So for folks of color are outside from that category of humanity, we are part of nature, right? So the colonial wound is how to attend to the colonial wound that we incarnate and represent. So that really takes us to look differently about what we're teaching and where the knowledge is that we're teaching coming from, by whom were they created, and to whom and what, for what purposes we're teaching them. So even when speaking about relationality, right? Yes, Lucy, thank you.
That kind of is a segue to what I was thinking about. Because I have really mixed feelings about psychology, ironically. And I wonder, in terms of the practices that you're discussing, this is sort of a big question, but not necessarily, how it shifts our understanding of the purpose of mental health practices. And would it be re-experienced as liberating one's expression of their identity and relationships? Or how would you redefine the purpose of mental health practices that would feel more congruent to your hopes here?
Yes, I think I have surrendered my interest to redefine mental health, or to reconfigure it, or to change it, or diversify it. And I think that's why I'm quite excited about the decolonial proposal, which is to delink. It's understanding that mental health responds to a cultural construction that is heavily Eurocentric, and that exists and it has the right to exist. But if we delink from that institution, then it allows us the opportunity to explore other ways of articulating transformation or healing. So even though I teach or train folks in family therapy, I'm very much interested in making visible mental health where it comes from, and then invite folks, and this is one of the purposes of the assignment, let's go and look outside from that mental health definition of what is to be a person of color. Go to our ancestral influences, go to other worlds that exist, but that the Eurocentric knowledge have erased, to learn how to engage in transformative experiences, healing experiences. So yeah, dealing instead of transforming. Yeah, thank you.
I just wanted to share quickly some feedback that students gave. I've heard students give over the years of, when we incorporated artistic or different ways that they could, for example, illustrate their learning and the ways they put things together. And they've done it in very artistic ways and beautiful. I mean, like I remember quilts and cooking lessons. And I mean, it was music, it was dance. But what they said was, this is the first time in my graduate program that I feel like I've been able to present me as an entire whole person.
Yes.
I didn't section any part of myself off.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Could I build on that, but be a bit divergent? That lack of holism that lack of being a self, how much of that is imposed on us by the fact that graduate studies are intellectually often narrowing experiences? And here I use a word that I identify myself as transdisciplinarity. I mean, so there's something about the structure of universities, the values, but also the intellectual structure that may be limiting. And I guess we only have 109 seconds.
Yes, the clock is going. Thank you very much for sharing that, Peter. Jon, I really enjoyed collaborating with you on this project. Thank you so very much, and for all the work that you put in it, for all the stuff that I've learned from you. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, nah, likewise, back at you.
Yes, and thank you everybody for the conversation. Much appreciated.
Thank you.